Chapter I. The dust of slaves and stars whispers from the edge of memory, from the stillness between starfire and void, from the dust of forgotten prophecy. The story begins. Listen. The Force does not sleep. It dreams, and in its dreaming, it remembers him. There was a boy, born of no father, beneath twin suns that never rested. In the wastes of Tatooine, where moisture is bled from rock and death walks unshod through the dunes, he cried his first breath, not into warmth or peace, but into bondage, into chains. The slaves called it fate. The Jedi called it the will of the Force. But the Force, it only watched his name, Anakin, a name like wind, like something light and free. And yet he belonged to Watto, a winged scavenger whose greed knew no fall. His mother, Shmi, was the only tether to kindness in a world made of heat and rust. Her eyes held sorrow too deep for speech, as if she knew the galaxy would come for her son, take him and never return him whole. The boy built things, machines, engines, droids, half-living, trembling with potential. He saw shapes before they existed. He raced pods with eyes closed. He walked with fire and lightning in his blood, and sand clinging to his bare heels. He did not know it then, but the Force curled around him like a serpent guarding a treasure, or perhaps waiting to strike. Across the stars, in towers of sterile marble, Jedi Masters whispered of balance. Balance, a word so often used, yet so rarely understood. What is balance, if not the silence between screams, the pause before the blade falls? Qui-Gon Jinn came to Tatooine, chasing threads of the Force unraveled by a mysterious blockade. But the moment he saw the boy, all other destinies burned to ash. Your focus determines your reality, he once said. And his focus was Anakin. He saw not a child, but a storm wrapped in skin. Midichlorian counts beyond reckoning, a birth without conception, a prophecy older than the Republic itself. A chosen one shall come, born of no father, to bring balance to the Force. Was it a promise or a curse? The Jedi Council looked upon Anakin with veiled suspicion. Yoda's ears drooped, Windo's eyes narrowed. Too old, they said, too afraid. But it was not fear in the boy's heart. It was love, love for his mother, love for freedom. And that is what made him dangerous. For the Jedi had long forgotten love. They feared it, hid from it, but Anakin did not hide. He felt it wholly, and the Force, it noticed he left Tatooine, never to return as a child. His mother wept, but did not protest. She knew the sand would not hold him. She whispered a blessing. He kissed her hand. The stars swallowed him whole, and yet the dust never left him, even among the shining halls of Coruscant. In Jedi robes and under the tutelage of Obi-Wan Kenobi, he carried the sand in his soul, the grit of slavery, the burn of helplessness. It stayed with him, it shaped him. He grew, and with growth came hunger, not for food, but for purpose, for power, yes, but not for its own sake. He wanted to save, he wanted to stop loss, even at the cost of himself. The Force trembled, the dark stirred, and Sidious watched. The Sith knew patience. Where Jedi saw promise, the Sith saw cracks. Where Jedi offered teachings, the Sith whispered truths. Anakin walked among the Jedi, but the desert still walked with him. In his dreams, he saw flames, his mother's scream, a galaxy burning. Dreams, yes, but in the Force, all dreams are echoes of truth. The prophecy followed him like a shadow without light, and always, behind it, A question: was he meant to save the Jedi or destroy them? The boy did not ask this, not yet, but the Force did, and it whispered the question into holocrons buried beneath Sith temples, into the blood of clone troopers not yet born, into the breath of a girl named Padme who would one day call him beloved. The story of Anakin Skywalker began not with light or darkness, but with chains, and the Force remembers chains. It remembers the moment they break, and the moment they are replaced with new ones. For destiny does not free, it binds, and now the first knot is tied. The dust has not settled, the stars have not spoken their last word. In the silence between one breath and the next, the Force waits. Chapter 2. The Oracle and the Shadowed Path. The Force speaks not in clarity, but in riddles, and prophecy is a double-edged saber. There is no light that does not cast a shadow, and there is no chosen one without a curse. Anakin was taken from Tatooine, yes, but what was left behind still bled. His mother remained a prisoner, his childhood a sacrifice. The Jedi called it necessary, but in the Force, nothing is forgotten. He was given a master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, loyal, honorable, disciplined. But Obi-Wan was still mourning the death of his own master, Qui-Gon Jinn, and the apprentice he was handed was a storm. Anakin did not bend like the others. He questioned. The code was not enough. He felt too much. And the Jedi Temple, for all its glass and gold, began to feel like another kind of cage. He was told to let go, to release attachment, to serve only the Force. But what is the Force, if not life itself? And what is life, if not love? It was there within those sacred, silent halls that Anakin first saw the flaw. A blindness, a denial, a rot beneath white stone. Yoda spoke often of fear. But Anakin's fear was not born of darkness. It was born of vision. He saw his mother weeping in shadows. He saw Pam laughing in sunlight. He saw a galaxy teetering on the edge of fire. He did not know it yet, but he saw more than any Jedi around him, and still, they kept him in chains of doctrine. The Council watched him with unease. He felt it. He wasn't trusted, not fully, not ever, and yet they needed him. The Clone Wars began with a scream. Geonosis, with its hives and red sand, echoed with the first true cries of galactic war. Anakin, still but a Padawan, charged into battle beside his master. He fought as if born for it, and perhaps he was, but war is a crucible, and it burns differently than peace. Each battle fed something inside him. Each loss carved something out. The line between Jedi and soldier blurred, between hero and weapon. The clones called him General Skywalker. They followed him without question, not for his rank, but for his presence, a presence that stirred hope and fear. There was a moment, barely recorded, a mission gone wrong on Jabi-Im, a whole battalion lost in the mud. Anakin emerged alone, his armor scorched, his eyes cold. He did not weep, he did not speak. Something died that day, not physically, but spiritually. Even Padmam, now a senator wrapped in politics and peace talks, could see it. When she touched his face, it felt like touching a wall, and yet she loved him. They married in secret, a bond forged in defiance of Jedi law. To the Jedi, this was dangerous. Attachment, they said, led to the dark side. But they never asked why he loved her. They never asked what that love was protecting him from. The Jedi saw a child of prophecy, but they never asked if he wanted the burden. The Force did not speak in warnings. It sang in riddles, visions, dreams, whispers in the stillness. Anakin began to hear them in meditation. He saw a cloaked figure in lightning, a throne of ruin, Padme crying blood, twin children reaching toward him, only to vanish in flame. And beneath it all, a voice, ancient velvet, telling him he could stop it, that the Jedi would let it happen, that only through power could he save what he loved. Was it the Force? Was it something darker? Even he could not tell. One evening, beneath the Coruscant spires, he spoke with Yoda. He asked, "What if you know someone you love is going to die?" Yoda replied, "Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose." But Anakin was not built for letting go. He was not a reed in the wind. He was a blade, and blades do not bend. They break. Meanwhile, the war worsened. Dooku's separatists slaughtered billions. The Jedi stretched thinner and thinner. The Senate, under Chancellor Palpatine, grew ever more powerful, and always. Anakin found himself closer to the Chancellor Palpatine, treated him not as a servant, but as an equal, a friend, a confidant. He whispered tales of Darth Plagueis, of powers the Jedi deemed unnatural, powers that could prevent death. To Anakin, that meant one thing: Padme would not die. Already he was dreaming of her death. Already he was screaming awake in the night. And so the seeds were planted, not with fire, not with threats, but with comfort. The Jedi offered wisdom. Palpatine offered certainty, and Anakin, broken by war, haunted by prophecy, and drunk on love, began to listen. He did not yet fall, but he leaned, and the Force leaned with him. Even now, in this memory that is not memory, the stars hold their breath. For the shadow that follows the Chosen One is no longer just prophecy, it is inevitable. And in the echoes of the Force, the whisper returns. He will bring balance, but at what cost? Chapter 3. The Fire of Geonosis. When the Force burns, it does not cleanse, it consumes. The war did not begin with fanfare. It began with betrayal, with shadows dancing beneath. Diplomacy, with a cry in the dark, and sabers igniting not in training halls, but on bloodied ground. Geonosis. A planet of red dust and hives, where machines outnumbered men and the sky reeked of oil. Here the Jedi marched not as peacekeepers, but as soldiers, and the Republic bled its first true wound. Anakin arrived with fire in his eyes. Obi-Wan, ever cautious, ever bound by duty, led him toward war with hesitation. But Anakin did not hesitate, for he was not born to wait, he was born to act. Palm was there, captured, sentenced. Her eyes did not fear death, but Anakin feared her absence more than he feared anything else. That fear, it was the match, and Geonosis was the pyre. They descended into the Colosseum, 3 against a swarm. Jedi and senator, lover, brother, and guardian. They stood beneath the searing suns of Geonosis, facing beasts bred for slaughter, and then 100 sabers ignited in unison, a tide of light, a thunderous sacred scream of the Jedi Order stepping into war. But the light was not salvation, it was warning, for as blades clashed, as droids shattered and Jedi fell, something deeper cracked beneath it all. The Order would never recover. Mace Windu struck down Jango Fett, and the flames began to spread. Count Dooku fled, and Yoda arrived not with wisdom, but with legions, clones, engineered soldiers, created in secret, approved by the Senate, commanded by the Jedi. The war machine was oiled and ready, and Anakin, he felt alive. In battle, he was more than a Jedi. He was free. He could unleash his fury upon those who threatened the Republic. He could protect those he loved. He could act where the Council only debated. But the cost was invisible. At first, the Force, once bright and songful, grew quiet. Its currents turned murky. The dark side did not scream it, whispered. Even now, buried in the past, you can hear it. Listen closely. It does not shout its name. It waits. It studies. And it knew Anakin. It knew his every fracture. On Geonosis, he faced Dooku. Obi-Wan fell. First, his leg shattered, his breath shallow. Anakin, enraged, struck forward, too fast, too reckless. Dooku severed his arm. Sparks flew. Blood hissed against the floor. The blade fell from his hand. And in its place, metal, the Jedi, gave him a new limb. Efficient, strong, lifeless. The first part of him to die was not his heart. It was his hand, and the Force noticed. That night, he held Podum with metal fingers. She kissed them as if they were still flesh. But he knew something had changed. He had stepped into war, and he had not stepped back. The Clone Wars began that day, and the Jedi did not walk beside the Republic. They became it, generals, warriors, symbols of hope and weapons of power. Anakin rose quickly, his tactics brutal, his instincts flawless, his compassion dangerous to the clones. He was legend. To the Council, he was a problem cloaked in potential, yet still they used him, still they gave him command, still they ignored the storm building within his soul. And in the shadows, Sidious watched. Always, for every war hides a deeper war, and every victory has a secret price. The Force itself began to fracture the balance the prophecy spoke of. It would not come through peace, it would come through fire, and Geonosis was only the first ember. The stars remember what the Jedi forget. They remember the cries of the fallen, the rusted sabers lost in dust, the clones who died nameless, face after identical face, and they remember Anakin standing alone at the edge of a crater, his face lit by flames, his shadow long. He won that day. But the Force does not measure victory in conquest. It measures it in consequence. And the price of Geonosis had only just begun to be paid. In the echo of that battle, a whisper stirs. The war will end when he ends. Chapter 4, The Serpent's Whisper. Count Dooku, he who leaves the light does not vanish. He becomes its echo. Twisted and cold. There is a kind of darkness that speaks not in anger, but in reason, cold, smooth, inevitable. That darkness was Count Dooku, once a Jedi Master, once noble, but even nobility rots under the weight of disillusionment. He left the Order, not in rage, but in disappointment. He saw the cracks long before. Anakin he named the rot, while others bowed before it. And in that clarity, he was seduced by Sidious, by the promise of order, by the illusion that darkness could fix what light had broken. Anakin faced Dooku again, years after Guinewan. This time, it was not the Padawan with the eager heart, it was the warrior, the chosen one, cloaked in fury and purpose. The battle took place aboard the invisible hand. Obi-Wan fell once more, always falling, always trusting. Anakin was left alone, a saber in each hand, breath hot, eyes cold, and Dooku smiled. He did not fear death, He feared what Anakin was becoming. You have hate, you have anger, he said, but you don't use them. But Anakin did. He used them all. In a flash of movement, the Count's hands were gone. Metal clattered to durasteel. Dooku fell to his knees, defeated, vulnerable, and Palpatine, watching from his throne of deception, whispered, "Kill him, Anakin." Hesitated, only for a moment. He knew it was wrong. He knew it was not the Jedi way. But the Jedi way had led to war, to pain, to Podman dying in his dreams, and so he obeyed. The saber cut clean, the head rolled, and silence screamed. That moment did not feel like triumph. It felt like loss. The Force shuddered. Something ancient broke. Anakin had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Not with fire, not with prayer, not even with love. What did Dooku know in his final breath? Perhaps that he was only a pawn, a placeholder, a trial for the true apprentice. Perhaps he understood, too late, that Sidious had never intended to share power, only to corrupt it. The Sith do not offer brotherhood. They offer purpose, sharp and hollow, and now Anakin had begun to accept that purpose, but his soul screamed against it. He told himself it was for peace, for the Republic, for Podbum, but the Force knew the truth. The serpent had whispered, and the boy had listened. Palpatine praised him, told him he had done what needed to be done, that mercy was weakness, that peace sometimes required cruelty. Anakin did not argue, but deep inside, something recoiled. He buried it, with duty, with battle, with dreams of saving Padme from a death that had not yet come. But the more he buried, the more the shadow grew, not just around him, but within him. Later, he spoke to the council. They rejected his request to be named master, and he, the chosen one, felt humiliated, not for pride, but for betrayal. After all he had done, all he had sacrificed. Still, they did not trust him. Still, they held him at arm's length, and in that rejection, Palpatine's whispers became truth. There is no faster path to darkness than being denied the light you were promised. And so, Count Dooku died, but the darkness he carried lived on, not in legacy, but in infection. And so the serpent sheds its skin, for the dragon has awakened. Chapter V. Ashes of the Temple Moon. Not all temples hold peace. Some cradled the bones of forgotten truth. There is a place beyond the core systems, cold, white, and silent. Ilum. The Jedi once called it sacred, a moon of crystal and frost, where the young were taken to forge their sabers. A rite of passage, a pilgrimage of becoming. But nothing sacred stays untouched. Not in war, not in darkness. The Jedi returned to Ilum, not with students, but with soldiers. The Separatists had come, mining its Kyber heart, desecrating the snow with smoke and steel. And so Anakin was sent, with battalions, with rage. He did not walk the icy halls as a pilgrim. He came as a blade. The younglings were gone, taken or killed. Only echoes remained there. Voices lingered in the Force, like candlelight, soft, trembling, and fading. Anakin moved through the ruins of the crystal caves, each step a memory he never had. Once he might have come here as a child, chosen his crystal, listened for its voice, but the Force had never spoken to him in gentle whispers. It had screamed, now it screamed. Again Ilum shook, explosions echoed through the frost-bitten catacombs, and in the shadows they found it. A Sith holocron, buried deep beneath the Jedi sanctum. The others did not see it. To them, it was just ice and debris, but Anakin felt it, like heat in winter, like breath. On a mirror, he touched it, and it awoke. Voices spilled from its core, not language, but memory, ancient, blurred, drenched in sorrow. Visions struck him. A Jedi burned at the stake by his own Padawans. A temple torn open by a Force storm. A boy crowned in fire beneath a blood-red sun. And behind it all, a voice without form. You are the echo. You are the wound. You are the storm made flesh. Anakin staggered. The clones reached for him, but he waved them off. He hid the holocron, said nothing. He did not tell Obi-Wan. He did not tell the Council. For the voice inside, it did not tempt him with power. It mourned with him, and that mourning felt true. Elsewhere, Ahsoka Tano walked her own shadowed path, still a Padawan, still believing, but Ilum would change her too. She found the shattered saber of a fallen youngling, held it in her hands, and saw the cracks in everything. Later, the Jedi would reclaim Ilum, but it would never be the same. Its kyber veins mined, its halls blackened, its sacredness gone, and yet the Jedi did not weep. They called it victory. Anakin did not weep. Either he called it necessary, but the Force wept. For what is lost in war is not only lives, it is meaning, and when meaning dies, so does light. In the hollowness left behind, the echo grows louder. He walks both paths now, but soon the path will choose him. Chapter 6. The night of screaming skies. When the heavens burn, the Force does not scream, it listens. The war was no longer a conflict. It was the galaxy's new religion. Planets bled, stars fell, and every battle became a sermon in fire and ruin. The people forgot what peace felt like, and the Jedi forgot who they were. Above the fractured world of Ryloth, the sky was aflame. Flotillas of separatist dreadnoughts shattered the twilight. Gunships screamed through smoke. Clone battalions burned their way across shattered cities, and at the center of it, Anakin Skywalker. He stood at the helm of his fleet, his gaze cold, his mind precise, his hands steady. He commanded without doubt, without mercy. The war was no longer a burden to him. It was a language, and he had become fluent in it. But beneath the metal and fire, something stirred. Not in the stars, in him. Ryloth was already lost. But the Jedi ordered its liberation. Anakin did not argue, he obeyed. But in his dreams, he saw Padme crying, reaching for him through smoke. Then vanishing, always vanishing, he saw clones with no faces. Jedi struck down by shadows with his own voice, and above it all, lightning and a throne. That night, the battle was won, but victory no longer mattered. Anakin descended to the planet's surface, his boots sinking into ash. He found a child, alone, under a broken sky. The boy reached for him. "Are you a Jedi?" Anakin hesitated. "Yes," but the Force whispered. Not for long, he rejoined his men. They cheered his name. They followed him not with discipline, but with faith. They saw him not as Jedi, but as something else, a force, a storm in human form, and he saw himself in their eyes, and part of him liked it. That night, in the silence of his ship, he listened, not to orders, not to Obi-Wan, not even to Podmess messages, but to the Force, and what he heard was not peace. It was pain, endless, constant, a tidal wave of suffering from 10,000 systems. He could feel every cry, every death, every wound, and he could not stop it unless he broke the chains, unless he used all of it, the light, the dark, the truth. He did not speak these thoughts aloud, but they lived in him, and the Force heard them. Yoda meditated in the halls of Coruscant, his face etched in weariness. He felt it too, the currents shifting, the balance tipping. He whispered, a dark shroud, the future is. But the darkness was not coming. It was already here, and its name was Skywalker. Elsewhere, in the void between hyperspace routes, Sid smiled. He did not need to act. Not yet. The Jedi were doing his work for him, and the war. The war was his choir. Anakin stood once more at the viewport. Stars blurred past him. He was not angry. He was not grieving. He was becoming, and in the skies he left behind. The fires still burned. They would not stop, not until the galaxy fell silent, and in the crackle of dying stars, the voice of memory returns. He who was born to save will bring the final storm. Chapter 7. The Trial of the Apprentice. Ahsoka's fall. The bond between master and apprentice is forged in trust and shattered in silence. She was a flame at his side, young, fierce, and reckless. Ahsoka Tano, not a title, not a tool, but a soul, given to Anakin not as a gift, but as a lesson. They hoped she would teach him patience, restraint, balance, but instead, she became something more dangerous, a mirror. She followed him through fire, learned his methods, echoed his disobedience, matched his intensity, and he saw in her what he could not be, hopeful, kind, still untethered from prophecies. Wait, but the war did not spare her. It reached her just the same. Every battlefield burned, some part of her away, and then came the betrayal, the temple bombing, an explosion not of fire alone, but of faith. Jedi died, trust shattered, and in the ruins the order turned inward, suspicion, interrogation, fear. Ahsoka stood accused, her innocence ignored, her loyalty questioned, her silence mistaken for guilt. They put her on trial, not in secret, but beneath galactic eyes, and Anakin fought for her, raged for her, defied orders, chased the truth to the dark corners of the underworld. He found the real traitor, unmasked the true culprit. He returned in triumph, believing justice would heal all wounds. But Ahsoka had already made her choice. They offered her a place among them again, a seat at their crumbling table. She looked at them, at Yoda, at Windu, at her former sisters and brothers, and she walked away, not out of spite, but sorrow. She had seen too much, heard too much, and something inside her had died. Anakin followed her into the hallway, the silence between them louder than any battle. He asked her why. She turned to him, eyes full of tears. Because they don't trust me, and maybe I don't trust them either. She did not speak of what she saw, the rot, the blindness, the fear the Jedi carried like robes. But Anakin heard it, and somewhere deep within it agreed. That night he stood alone, the temple, lights flickering, the council chambers empty. He remembered all they had taken from him, his mother, his freedom, now his apprentice, and still they expected obedience, still they spoke of balance, while everything around them crumbled. He clenched his fists, not in rage, in resolve. He would never be powerless again. The bond between master and apprentice had broken not with violence, but with silence, a fracture without sound, and the Force split with it. Ahsoka left Coruscant alone, but the echo of her absence remained. It haunted Anakin, not like a ghost, but like a prophecy unfulfilled. The Jedi called it necessary, but the Force called it loss, and the Sith called it progress. In the space where trust once lived, the whisper returns. One by one, the pillars fall, and the temple shivers in its sleep. Chapter 8. The Holocron of Despair. Some knowledge is not meant to be found. Some truths do not illuminate, they poison. The Jedi Temple sat high above the city's stormlight, its spires reaching into polluted skies. Within it, countless secrets whispered in silence, trapped in crystal, code, and prayer. Among them, one pulsed quietly, unopened, forgotten, waiting the holocron of despair. It had no official name, only a warning etched into the stone that cradled it. Do not listen unless your soul is unbreakable. Most Jedi avoided it. Some denied it existed. But Anakin was drawn to it. Its presence called to him in meditation, in dreams. In the silence after victory, he entered the restricted archives late one night, robes wrapped like armor, footsteps soundless. The temple guards did not question him. He was the chosen one. He was trusted, feared, and that was enough. The holocron was blackened crystal, its edges chipped, its glow sickly, deep, violet-like, a bruise on the Force. When he placed his hand upon it, it did not open with words. It opened with memory, not his, not even the orders, but something older, something wrong. The voice that spilled forth was twisted, ancient, half-rotted with time. You seek to save, but every savior becomes tyrant in the eyes of those who cannot be saved. Anakin did not flinch. You dream of preventing death, but death is not the enemy. Fear is, and it lives inside you. He trembled. He saw visions. 1,000 Jedi screaming in a ring of fire. Padme drowning in black water, reaching for him. Palpatine with yellow eyes, smiling, and himself, clad in armor, breathing like thunder. Alone, the holocron showed him the end, but wrapped it as a beginning. You must choose, the voice hissed. Sacrifice one, or lose all. He slammed the holocron shut, but its echo stayed, inside him, in every breath, in every battle. He told no one, not Obi-Wan, not Padme, not the Council. The Jedi would not understand. They had never wanted him to understand. They had always feared what he might become, and now, so did he. But it was too late. The holocron had seen him, and in doing so, it had named him. It whispered not to tempt, but to reveal Anakin Skywalker. It had said, was not the balance. He was the breaking point, and the Force listened. It always listened, even when the Jedi stopped. Especially then, the holocron returned to its place. But it no longer slept, and neither did Anakin, for the weight of the future had found him, and it was shaped like a grave. The galaxy turned. The war dragged on. But a deeper conflicting scene had begun, and the whisper was no longer distant. It now lived behind his eyes. He will fall, but it will feel like rising. Chapter IX. Poms, Silent Prophecy. Some prophecies are never spoken aloud. They live behind the eyes. They tremble in the voice. They die in the heart. She was not a Jedi, not a soldier, not a wielder of the Force, yet Padme Amidala was the axis around which Anakin's soul spun. Queen at 14, Senator of Naboo, voice of reason in a galaxy losing its mind. But what no one saw, not the Senate, not the Jedi, not even Anakin, was the burden she carried in silence. She knew he was slipping. Not with proof, not with certainty, but in the quiet way he avoided her eyes, in the way his hands trembled after battle, in the way he no longer called her angel. She saw the edges fraying, and she said nothing, because love, in its purest form, does not always speak. It waits and hopes. But even love has limits. Pobdam dreamed of peace, not as a senator, but as a woman, a mother. She had not yet told him, not fully, but she was pregnant, and the Force, though distant from her, stirred with unease, not dread, not light, something stranger, as if the future could not decide what these children would be. Twins, two paths, two torches in the dark, unborn, unnamed yet, already part of the great pattern. Pom sensed it. Though she did not speak of the Force, she felt it, as a mother does. She watched the Senate crumble, watched Palpatine claim more power, saw the Jedi falter, saw Anakin rise through the ranks of war like a tide no wall could hold back. She began to fear what would be left of him once the war ended. Not if, when, because peace was coming. Palpatine promised it, and Padme knew better than to trust promises in wartime. She went to Bail Organa, to Mon Mothma, to those who still remembered what the Republic was before the fire, and in secret halls she asked questions that no longer had safe answers. What if democracy is dying? What if we're already the enemy? They did not speak rebellion. Not yet, but the seed was sown, and Anakin sensed it. He asked her what she was hiding. She smiled, touched his cheek, and told him she loved him. But the silence between them, that ancient, heavy silence, grew, not from absence, but from fear. Podmam feared what she would lose. He feared she already had, and so the truth stayed buried about the baby, about the whispers of dissent, about the shadow in his eyes. Padme once believed in destiny. Now she believed in delay. Maybe if I just hold on, she thought. Maybe if I just love him hard enough, it will be enough. But the Force had already chosen its path, and it had chosen tragedy. Because even though Padme never spoke a prophecy, she carried one dot in her silence, in her womb. In her final, desperate hope, she saw the future. She just didn't know how to stop it, and the Force wept for her, because it could not either. He will fall, she will break, and from their ruin 2 stars will rise. But not yet. The fire must still come, and the scream has not yet left her throat. Chapter X. The voice beneath the mask. Before a mask is worn, it is imagined. Before it hides the face, it hides the soul. There were 2 voices in Anakin now. One spoke in the tone of Jedi discipline measured.com, insistent. The voice of Obi-Wan, of Yoda, of light and restraint. It reminded him of the code, of control, of peace. The other was not so easily named. It did not scream. It agreed with his pain, with his fear, with the unbearable weight of loss he had not yet endured. And slowly it grew louder. Anakin was not yet Darth Vader, but the idea of him had begun to speak, not from outside, but from within. Palpatine fanned the flame in candlelit offices high above Coruscant, far from council ears. He spoke gently, not as a Sith Lord, not as a Chancellor, but as a friend. He told Anakin of the failures of the Jedi, of how they had grown dogmatic, blind, arrogant. He offered not commands, but understanding. He spoke of Darth Plagueis, a Sith Lord said to possess the unnatural power to stop death. Never said it directly, but he did not need to put me her death. The dream, the scream, the breath that stops in his arms. Anakin could already see it. The voice inside him, the mask that had no face yet. It whispered, "He is not lying." The Jedi did not see it. They feared Palpatine's reach, suspected his ambition. But they did not see the infection, so they turned to Anakin, asked him to spy on the Chancellor, to betray the only man who spoke to him without doubt. It was a wound. Without blood, a betrayal wrapped in duty. Anakin said yes, but inside, something cracked. He began to question not the Chancellor, but the Jedi. Why now? Why him? If they truly trusted him, why demand he become a spy? The voice behind his eyes whispered again, "Because they never trusted you." Not really, not since you were a child. And he listened, not because he was weak, but because he was tired. Tired of being asked to wait, to obey, to lose. Each night he stood in silence at Palma's balcony. She whispered of peace. He whispered of nightmares. She kissed his brow and promised he would be a great father, and he almost believed her, but the vision would return. Her death, her scream, the child never born. He would not lose her, not like his mother. Not again. The Jedi did not understand, but the voice behind the mask, the other voice, it understood perfectly. A mask is not forged in metal. Not at first. It begins as necessity, then becomes belief, then becomes self. Anakin did not wear armor yet, but he was no longer bare. He was hiding from himself, from the fear, from the love, from the prophecy. He was not Darth Vader yet, but the voice was real. It no longer whispered, it waited. Chapter 11. The fall of Windu. Justice without balance becomes judgment, and judgment, when cloaked in righteousness, can become execution. The storm finally broke. What had been whispered became spoken. What had been feared became true. The Sith were not extinct. They had never been. Palpatine, Chancellor of the Republic, Guardian of the Senate, wartime savior, was Sidious, and Anakin knew, not from confession, but from revelation. Palpatine had shown him, not through deceit, but through trust. He had placed the choice in Anakin's hands, as if to say, "You already know, you've always known. Now decide." The Jedi would never understand. They could not see the need for power to protect, only its danger. They spoke of control, of patience, of peace. But all Anakin saw was decay. A galaxy burning while the Jedi meditated. He went to the council, told them what he knew, not as a traitor, but as a servant, and Mace Windu, sharp-eyed, strong, unbending, acted. He took 3 masters and flew toward the Chancellor's chamber, and Anakin was told to wait. Wait, the word echoed like a curse. He had waited all his life, for trust, for respect, for freedom, for truth. Now, with Padme's life hanging by a thread of vision, they told him to wait again. But the Force was no longer quiet. It screamed. He mounted his speeder. The engines cried with urgency, and above Coruscant, as lightning crackled in the sky, Anakin raced toward destiny. Inside the Chancellor's chamber, sabers were already drawn. 3 Jedi Masters lay fallen. Mace Windu remained gritting his teeth, his blade at Sidious's throat. "You are under arrest." But the Sith Lord did not beg. He smiled, and Anakin arrived. Torn, he looked into Sidious's eyes, then into Windu's. He saw not evil and good, but 2 truths, each incomplete. windu, prepared to strike, and in that moment Anakin chose the blade. Flashed, the hand fell. Windu's scream pierced. The night as lightning devoured him, and the dark side did not enter the room. It was unleashed. Anakin collapsed, gasping, as Sidious' face deformed. Soul revealed stood above him. Only now, at the end, do you understand? Anakin wept, not from grief, but from the sheer weight of consequence. He had done it, not in rage, not in hate, but in desperation. And Sidious knelt beside him. There was no ceremony, no ritual, only a whisper. You are now Darth Vader. Anakin did not rise as himself. He rose as a shadow, not of the Sith, not of Sidious, but of his own choice. The Jedi had failed him, and he had failed them all. In the distance, lightning burned across the sky, reflecting in glass, in blood, in the broken light of the dying order, and the Force, once splintered, cracked completely. The Chosen One was no longer a prophecy. He was a weapon. He was Vader. Chapter 12, The Purge of the Temple. When light is betrayed by its own, it does not scream. It extinguishes itself. In silence, night fell like a veil across Coruscant. The temple, once the beacon of the Jedi Order, stood proud. Its spires lit not by candles or Kyber, but by the last glow of hope. Inside, younglings dreamed of knighthood. Masters meditated in stillness. Archives pulsed, with knowledge so ancient it had no beginning. None of them felt what was coming. Not until it was too late. The sky turned red with gunfire. Engines roared in formation, and at the head of them, not a stranger, not a Sith-cloaked monster from beyond, but him, Anakin Skywalker, the hero with no fear. Draped in a dark robe, his saber at his side, he marched into the temple he once called home. Not with fury, with purpose. The clones followed his orders. The 501st, elite and loyal, raised their rifles with no hesitation. They did not question. To them, he was still General Skywalker. To them, this was war. But it was not war. It was judgment. The first to die were the guards at the gates. They fell. Without words, without time to ignite their blades. In the grand halls of the temple, sabers lit in confusion. Children cried. Masters ran. Anakin walked through it all. His blade ignited, brilliant, terrible, final. He did not speak. He did not hesitate. The archives burned. Holocrons shattered. Statues toppled. And in the meditation chamber, where once he had listened to the Force's song, there was only fire. In the youngling's training room, a boy no older than 10 stepped forward. There are too many of them, Master Skywalker. What are we going to do? Anakin's breath caught. For a single moment, the dream returned. The child in the desert, the pod racer, the boy who wanted to help. But then, the voice beneath the mask spoke, and the saber rose. There was no scream, only light then dark. Yoda felt it. Across the stars, deep in exile on Kashyyyk, he staggered. He touched the dirt, his hands shaking, and whispered, "Gone. They are consumed by shadow." Obi-Wan, too, trembled. On Utapau, the Force cried in his bones. They did not know the name yet, but they felt it, the betrayal, the death of the Order, not at the hands of a Sith, but by one of their own. Sidious stood before the Synod, declared the Jedi traitors, proclaimed a new empire, promised peace through power, and they cheered. All while the temple bled behind him. Anakin stood at its highest tower, looking down on Coruscant. The fires below were not an ending. They were the beginning pad. Searched for him, but he could not answer. He was not Anakin now. He was Vader in spirit, though not yet in armor. The temple, once sacred, had become a tomb, and in its ashes, the galaxy's fate was rewritten. Not with a roar, but with a whisper. He who was chosen to bring balance has cast it into shadow. Chapter 13. The Siege of the Separatists, the Blade of Peace, once drawn in defense, now moves in silence, extinguishing all who remain. The Jedi were gone. The temple lay in ruin, and across the stars, Order 66 echoed like a death knell. But the war had not yet ended. There were still enemies to slay, and so Vader was sent, not to finish the war, but to erase it. Mustafar, a world of flame and ash, a molten scar in the galaxy. It boiled beneath twin eclipses, its lava veins like arteries feeding a dark heart. There, the leaders of the Separatist alliance hid, cowards now, generals yesterday, hollow men behind wealth and fear. They had outlived their use, and Sidious no longer veiled, no longer patient leashed his weapon. Vader arrived alone. No clone legion, no Senate approval, just robes, a saber, and the silence of a man who no longer needed permission. The droids did not resist him. They were programmed to obey him, just as he had once been trained to obey the Jedi. Now both chains were broken. He walked through the obsidian halls like a shadow of the storm, and one by one, the leaders fell. He did not argue, he did not explain, he did not even slow. Newt Gunray pleaded, Wat Tambor begged, Poggle the Lesser wept in confusion, but Vader was not there to listen. He was there to end. The chamber echoed with screams and smoke. Blades sizzled through flesh and armor, and when it was over, only the hum of molten rock remained. Anakin Skywalker had once dreamed of ending war. Darth Vader ended everything else. This was no longer about the Republic, or the Jedi, or peace. This was the cleansing. The galaxy wiped clean of loose ends. All made quiet for the birth of Empire. Sidious watched from afar. Pleased, but not yet complete. He still needed his apprentice whole. And Vader, though broken, still had one bond left. Padme. She came to Mustafar in desperation, cloaked in fear and love. She saw the smoke, the blood on his hands, the fire in his eyes. She reached for him, whispered his name, but he no longer answered to it to her. He spoke of a new future, of an empire built on order, not chaos, of ending death, ending pain, of ruling together. But she did not see a savior. She saw a stranger, and her heart broke before her body ever did. Behind her, Obi-Wan stepped into view, and Anakin. Betrayal once again. He had lost the Jedi. Now he was losing her. And so rage returned, hot, primal, unstoppable. He did not see his friend, only the man who came to take everything. Their battle had not yet begun, but fate had already chosen its victor. On Mustafar, surrounded by fire, the final threads of Anakin Skywalker's soul began to burn, not by the saber, but by choice, by silence, by the refusal to let go of what was already lost. He had slain the Separatists, but he could not slay destiny, not yet. The lava waited, the blade would rise, and the masks still unworn called to him. It did not promise peace, only purpose, and Anakin, ever desperate to save, was now willing to destroy. The war had ended, but the storm had just begun. Chapter 14. Duel at the end of the world, when brotherhood dies, the Force mourns in flame. And when destiny breaks, it screams. It began not with words, but with silence. The kind only former brothers know. Obi-1 stepped forward, his robes dusted with ash, his eyes full of sorrow, not hate. Padme lay collapsed behind him, still breathing, barely, and Anakin, no, Vader now, stood on the landing platform, his cape stirring in the heat of Mustafa's inferno. He said her name once, but it no longer sounded right in his mouth. Obi-Wan raised his voice. You have done that yourself. Accusation. Perhaps. But more than that, grief, the Anakin he trained, fought beside, laughed with, was gone. But Vader denied it. He called the Jedi traitors, declared peace through strength, promised a world without weakness, without lies, without death. Obi-Wan's answer was not political. It was a whisper. You were my brother, Anakin. I loved you, and the duel began. It did not begin as war. It began as mourning. Lightsabers clash blue against blue, not for victory, but for what had been lost. The fire roared around them, lava bursting like the galaxy itself was bleeding. Metal crumbled. Walkways split. The fortress fell. But they did not stop. On catwalks, on crumbling droid arms, on floating debris, their dance of blades became prophecy fulfilled, not of balance, but of rupture. Anakin fought not to win, but to prove to himself, to Padme, to the Force, that he was right, that this was justice. But justice forged in fear is no justice at all. And Obi-Wan's heart, torn open, defended not the Jedi Order, but Anakin's soul. Even as it slipped away, they were equal. Mirror and mirror, master and student, brother and brother, until the moment came. The high ground Obi-Wan begged him, don't try it, but pride no longer listens. And fate, now fully awakened, struck. The blade fell, the body burned, the scream echoed, limbs severed, skin blackened, eyes filled with fire, not from the lava, but from betrayal. Anakin Skywalker ceased to be. Obi-Wan stood over him, his saber trembling, his heart shattered. He could not finish it. He walked away. He carried the saber. He carried the name. He carried the failure. Behind him, the fire consumed what was left, but not entirely. The body lived, barely the soul, twisted, and the masks, still unworn, waited in silence. A coffin for the living. A voice without a face in the ashes of Mustafa. The galaxy's future was not decided. It was forged in pain, in flame, in loss. He who was loved now burns. He who was promised now becomes curse. Chapter 15. The birth of the machine. When flesh fails, the shadow adapts. And in that silence, a new voice is forged cold, hollow, eternal. He did not die. The Force would not allow it. Sidious arrived on Mustafar, not as a rescuer, but as a collector. He found what remained of the Chosen One, charred, mangled, weeping in unconscious agony, still breathing. Barely. The Dark Lord looked down upon the broken body and did not see failure. He saw completion, the final severance, the death of mercy, the silencing of doubt. Sidious reached out, and the broken man was taken, wrapped in the sterile cold of medical transport, sealed in shadows. The birthing chamber was not warm. It was metal and pain and choice, long gone, no healers, only surgeons, machines, cold instruments guided by Sith commands. The body that once danced through the stars, that once leaped in blazing duels with elegance and rage, was now just a vessel. Anakin Skywalker had been stripped of everything: his limbs, his voice, his freedom, his name. And in that emptiness, the machine began to grow. They grafted durasteel to bone, wove wires through nerves, replaced skin with armor. Every screw was a sacrament, every plate a funeral. He did not scream, he could not, but within the soul shrieked. For there is a special kind of torment in being awake for your own extinction. In the shadows of Polis Massa, Padma gave birth. Twins, light, breath, hope, but she was already fading. The medics found no wounds, no poison, no cause, only absence, a soul unraveling. Her last words, "There is still good in him." Then silence. 2 lives began. One ended, and across the stars, so too began the life that was not a life. The machine. Sidious stood by as the mask was lowered. A crown of iron, a tomb without grave. The sealed chamber hissed. The figure within rose, tall, staggering, wrapped in black dot. The respirator activated. A mechanical breath. That sound, that birth cry, echoed like a wound in time. Darth Vader opened his eyes. Sidious told him, "You killed her." The room shook with rage. The Force cracked the bindings. Machines shattered. Walls bent. But there was no salvation in the scream. Only truth. There was nothing left to save, only to serve. The promise was broken. The dream burned. The boy from Tatooine was ash. The Jedi was gone. The husband, the friend, the father, all drowned beneath the mask. The galaxy would tremble. The stars would forget his name. Only the sound would remain. That breath, that endless breath, and from it a new age would begin, not of peace, not of justice, but of order and fear. He who could not save life will now bring only death. Chapter 16. The Emperor's hand, where once a hand reached for peace, now it clutches only control. And through that grip, the galaxy, SUFFOCATES, Vader was no longer a man. He was not a warrior, not a savior, not a brother, nor husband, nor father. He was function, the Emperor's hand, the blade that required no thought, the will of darkness, given shape and voice. And that voice was not his. It emerged from a vocoder, heavy, mechanical, inhuman. Even when he ordered death, it sounded like grief, but grief no longer reached him. It only echoed. Hollow, world by world, rebellion died in silence. Sidious ruled from Coruscant, a shadow enthroned, while Vader walked the stars as a storm. The Senate submitted. The Jedi were no more, and hope retreated to caves and forgotten moons. The galaxy spoke his name with reverence and terror, not Anakin and not Chosen One, just Vader. To the officers of the Empire, he was authority incarnate. To the remaining Jedi in hiding, he was judgment. He hunted them without pause. Not for justice, not for revenge, but for completion. Every Jedi slain brought silence, and in that silence, he tried to forget her voice, Padme's whisper, Obi-Wan's final scream. The past became weight, so he crushed it. The Inquisitors were trained beneath him, children of the dark, molded in fear. They called him master, but he did not teach, he punished. He had no apprentices, only tools. He remembered what it meant to train someone, and he had burned that memory long ago. Sidious watched carefully. Vader obeyed, but somewhere beneath the metal, The seed of rebellion was not in the outer rim. It was inside him, a quiet, unseen fracture. He had done everything, slaughtered the separatists, crushed the Jedi, built the Empire, but Padme was still gone. Her voice did not return. The dreams did not stop. Mustafa. The temple, the scream, the choice. And in those moments between missions, in chambers empty of light, he remembered, not her face, but her last words. There is still good in him. He told himself it was a lie, but lies do not haunt, only truths do. The Emperor summoned him. Again, another insurgency, another forgotten Jedi, another fire to extinguish. He bowed, as always. But the crack within deepened, not with rebellion, with regret. He had power unlimited, unquestioned, but power without purpose is a chain, and Vader, the Emperor's hand, the scourge of the stars, was still bound, not by armor, not by Palpatine, by what he had chosen to become. And deep beneath the layers of iron, beneath the breath and the rage, Anakin still watched, drowned, buried, waiting. He who became the hand of evil will tremble when touched by innocence. Chapter 17. The sun and the shadow from the ruin of the father, a question is born. And that question is hope. In the silence between wars, a boy looked to the stars. His name was Luke. He did not know what he was, not yet on Tatooine, where his father had once dreamed, once bled, once begged to be free. Luke gazed into twin suns, unaware that the shadow watching him was his own blood. He was not trained, not prepared, not chosen, but destiny does not always need consent. It only needs proximity, and Vader felt him. He did not know the boy's name, did not know the face, but in the Force, a tremor, a thread, a light that would not go out. Sidious felt it too. But where the Emperor saw threat, Vader felt something more dangerous. Recognition. The boy's presence was familiar, like a memory, not his own. Rebellion rose in fragments, small sparks in the dark. A princess with fire in her eyes, a smuggler, too fast for fate, a Wookiee with ancient grief, a droid with secrets, another with faith, and at their center, Luke, naive, brave, unformed. He carried no prophecy, only a question. Why? Why was his father gone? Why had the galaxy broken? Why did the Force ache with absence? He followed that ache, to Yoda, to Ben. The ghosts of a war, long buried, whispered to him. Your father was a Jedi, but no one told him the truth, not at first, that his father had become something else, that the machine he would face, the darkness he would fear, was once a man named Anakin. When they met, it was not reunion, it was collision. Luke faced Vader not as son, but as Jedi, on Cloud City. Blade met blade, and when Vader struck, not to kill, but to reveal the truth, shattered the boy. I am your father. The words twisted time. Luke fell into darkness. Not from death, from knowledge he had searched for a hero. Instead, he found a ghost in armor. But even as he screamed, the thread held Vader reached, not with comfort, but with longing. The Emperor watched, amused. He saw a chance to break the boy as he had broken the father, but this son he refused. On the Death Star, blade in hand, Luke faced both masters. He saw the darkness in himself, felt its weight, but he cast it away, not with power, but with mercy. I am a Jedi like my father before me. And in that moment, Vader wavered, not from weakness, but from memory. He remembered her Padme, the child, the dream, and the mask, cracked not in metal. In will he turned, he lifted Sidious, carried him into death, and in doing so brought balance, not through war, not through destruction, through redemption. He died not as Vader, but as Anakin, face bare, eyes full of light, sun beside him, the prophecy fulfilled not in fire, but in forgiveness. He who was shadow became light. He who was machine became man. He who fell rose. Chapter Zevi, the echo beyond death. When breath ceases, the force speaks, and in that stillness the truth reveals itself not as command, but as memory. He was gone, the armor shattered, the breath silenced, the face no longer masked. In the glow of the Death Star's ruin, Luke burned his father's shell, not in hatred, not in triumph, but in honor. The fire rose quietly, a funeral for what had been. Jedi, Sith, slave, soldier, shadow, all of it now smoke, all of it now sky. The Force did not celebrate, it listened, and for the first time in years it remembered. Him not as Darth Vader, but as Anakin, the boy who dreamed, the man who lost, the father who chose. Through fire his voice returned, not to command, to guide. He became more than memory, more than myth. He became echo, a shape in the light, not bound by body, not bound by mask. OBI-1 felt him. Yoda welcomed him and Luke. He smiled through tears, because he knew the darkness had not won, not truly it had tried to bury love under war, tried to turn fear into power, tried to end the Chosen One with armor and ashdot. But Anakin endured, not in strength, in sacrifice. Galaxies shifted, empires crumbled, and still the whisper traveled through the cracks in time, through Kyber, through dream. There is still good in him. Words once spoken in desperation, now carved into the Force itself, an eternal truth, not because he never fell, but because he rose, not because he was perfect, but because he chose to return. He was the Chosen One, not for his power, but for his repentance, and now he watches, not as ghost, as guardian, through every act of courage, every spark of hope, every hand that reaches instead of strikes. He is there no longer. Legend, simply father, friend, witness. The tragedy is over, but the story echoes softly, endlessly, in stars, in silence, in sleep. He who fell into flame rose through love, and the Force, once shattered, sings whole again. This concludes the sacred retelling of the tragedy of Darth Vader.